Let's bring in Robert Murray right now to talk us through it a little bit more, because he broke the story last night that the extension talks were starting to heat up. Great work, Robert, on that front. Were you surprised that it actually came together this quickly after that?
No, I'm not surprised. And hey, thanks guys for having me on. I'm not necessarily surprised it happened this quickly. I'd heard last night that there was some pretty strong momentum toward a deal getting done. I cushioned it just because you never really know with these kind of deals like of this magnitude. They can drag on quite a bit in negotiations, but I had heard optimism from both sides that a deal would get done and it would make him the highest paid player in Royals franchise history. It ended up getting done today, and now the Royals have their long-term face of the franchise in place. And I think that's going to end up being a really good thing for one, like building the new stadium and getting that deal done, and then two, recruiting players to in free agency going forward as well.
Yeah,
Robert,
go ahead.
John.
No, I was going to ask the same thing. Getting more players to come to Kansas City. You see teams that, the Giants, to name one. It seems like nobody really wants to go there and play there. Now with Kansas City, it seems like now you see people getting paid. You see the new acquisitions they got. It's a nice place to be at, and it looks like you might get some big other names, free agent-wise next year and for years to come, seeing what they did with Bobby, right?
No, absolutely. I think that's going to end up being something that's really valuable for them. And it's, as you said, it's something that a lot of these teams have tried to do, get the big names signed long-term, like the Giants especially. They've struggled more than any team with that. But now the Royals, who have been one of the most aggressive teams this offseason, which I got to be real, did not necessarily see that coming at the start of the offseason here, but they've added some really nice pieces to the rotation. They've added some good bullpen pieces as well. They've added some pieces to the offense as well, and now they extend Bobby Witt Jr. I think it's a really good time to be a Kansas City Royals fan, and it makes you wonder what else they're going to be able to do maybe this offseason, but just going forward as well. And especially in that division, which is so winnable, seeing them trying to go and compete in it, I think is really refreshing, especially since, I'm sure we've talked about it a bunch on here already in previous shows, but how inactive the market has been. So this has been like a really nice change of pace and just really refreshing overall.
What does this do for the Royals' hopes of a new stadium? We talked to JJ Piccolo, their GM, and he kind of was like, we asked him that, and he's like, I don't know about that. But this has got to be encouraging, right? Because it shows the owner will spend not only on Witt, but also on, you mentioned some other players, Lugo, Waka, some of the other guys they brought in. So does this give them a better shot of getting a new stadium? Because honestly, Kansas City is a great stadium. It's a great baseball town. The stadium's just kind of in the middle of nowhere along with the football stadium. So they will obviously want to build it downtown. Does this help? This has to help them, right, to get a new baseball stadium?
Oh, absolutely. Because now that they have Witt extended, like that's going to ensure there's a lot of money coming into into that team from a fan perspective. There's going to be teams that are fans that are buying not Whit Merrifield, but Bobby Witt Jr. Jerseys. There are going to be people buying tickets. There's going to be people buying all sorts of different stuff, and there's going to be you now have that long-term face of the franchise, which is a really difficult thing for these teams to get. And now I think that's only going to help them get this new stadium deal done. And I think that's going to end up being something that is a real, like a building block for this team. And it's going to help with that new stadium. It's going to help with the roster construction going forward. I think it's going to be nothing but great things for that city. And I also think too, like it's a really good thing for the player as well. If you look, he's 23 years old, just ended up getting about a little less than $290 million. That doesn't even include the 3 option years on it as well. It's a great deal for that team, what they can become, for that stadium, and for the player. I think it's just a win-win for both sides. And considering the level of player that he is, it would not even be a surprise if he ends up outplaying that contract as well. He's a generational player, and that's clearly what the Royals believe with this deal.
A lot of these young contracts, you talk about like the options that are at the end. It's like, 3 years of options, 4 years of options. Has there been contracts for young guys like this that have opt-outs, player opt-outs? Or is it because it's normally like the teams get like, hey, they have Andrew McCutchen signs his deal and he gets to have 3 team options, that kind of thing. But these opt-outs, is this a new thing?
I cannot honestly remember another deal quite like that has opt-outs for a young player. I think that would end up being a case where it would be a rare deal. I have not personally heard of this deal having opt-outs. I've just um, heard of them having option years at the end of the contract. But as far as opt-outs, that's basically unheard of for a young player and a contract quite like this. Because teams like having those option years at the end of the deal, just because obviously if the team is going to pick up those options, clearly the player has exceeded the contract. So if that is indeed included in this deal, then I think that would be one of the first, if not the first, that would have that.
Robert, is this a sign to the rest of the Central that, hey, the Royals are coming to play now? Because no one else in the Central is really spending a lot of money. The Twins obviously are getting rid of money. The Guardians never seem to do much. Tigers spend a little bit here and there, but not like they used to under Ilitch. Mike Ilitch, the former owner, before he passed away. And the White Sox are just kind of stuck in perpetual rebuild. So is this a sign that, hey, the Royals are coming, and now guess what? We have money to spend, and we're actually going to spend it?
Oh, I think that's spot on, AJ. I think this is a sign to the division that they're in this very seriously. And really, there's no team that's running away with that division. I mean, the Twins obviously have a lot of talent. They just traded Polanco to the Mariners, obviously. They ended up adding a couple more pieces, just agreed to a deal last night with Jay Jackson to bolster their bullpen, which is already really good. So, I mean, there's obviously, the Royals aren't, at this point, to me, they're not the favorite to win the division, but I think they can be easily competitive. And there's a lot of offseason left too. So they can continue to try to upgrade this roster. But I do think they're meaningfully better than where they were last year. And considering that they have this long-term piece in place with Bobby Witt Jr., they're going to I think it's a sign to the rest of the division and even the American League that the Royals are not messing around now, and that they can end up being one of these contending teams before too long in the division. But if they continue to add pieces around this roster, then they could even compete for the American League as a whole. And this is like the first big building block of it. And maybe it's not this offseason, maybe it's the deadline, but I don't think they're done. I think when you're adding pieces like this, you just got to keep your foot on the gas pedal, especially after doing a deal like what you just did with Bobby Witt.
Sometimes people don't understand my sarcasm. I know you do, Robert, but how can they be doing this with the uncertainty of all these TV contracts?
I'll tell you, the amount of times that I've heard that this offseason is unbelievable. It's it's a real thing for some of these teams, but man, you would think they'd be able to spend no matter what's going on here. But I mean, Eric, you and I talk. I mean, I'm curious from your end, when you hear this RSN stuff, does it just drive you nuts, or what goes through your mind?
Yeah, it drives me nuts. I get it. I get it. That is a huge. Yeah. That is a huge amount of money. That 60 million, 50 million for some of the lower level teams. That's a huge amount of money. But I also see the amount of money they're getting from national stuff too. So that and I see what the Royals are doing, and they are a smaller market, and they even compete in their smaller market. They compete with the Cardinals. A lot of fans in the area become Cardinal fans. I don't think it's right, but I'm a Royal guy, but it's one of those things that I am this today with this extension. It makes me happy because when anybody else, we're just not sure of the whole TV deal. What's going to happen here?
Yeah. I'll tell you, it comes back to this for me. If the Royals are spending, then anyone can spend. Because they're a team that was not spending much, if at all, in previous off seasons, and now they're not up there they're not what the Dodgers spending, obviously, but they're probably top 5 in spending this offseason. So as I said, if there's any team, or if the Royals are spending, then any team can spend. And really, there should be no excuse otherwise.
So I want to jump a little gears here. I know this is so cool for Bobby and any player that makes this, but I want to talk a little bit about Lorenzen and Syndergaard, Mike Lorenzen and Syndergaard with their little throwing session they got going on over there you talked about. Why don't you dive deep into that and let us know?
No, darn right. I appreciate you asking that. Yeah, so Lorenzen and Syndergaard threw for teams about a week or so ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. And from what I had heard, both of those guys really impressed. And Lorenzen drew immediate interest after that throwing session. And from everything that I've gathered, his market has begun to heat up. And it's about time, because for me, he's one of the more intriguing high upside pitchers on the market, considering obviously he was really good with the Tigers last year. And then he got traded to Philadelphia, and then he threw the no-hitter there. And he was, I think he allowed 0 runs or maybe 1 run in the first 17 innings in Philadelphia. And you could see the upside there for sure. He bottomed out, and now his free agency is a bit murky. I think he's a really strong candidate for a 1-year deal. And if I was a team like, say, the Giants, or say the Red Sox, or say, a lot of these teams that need starting pitching, I think that would make a ton of sense. And it won't break the bank either. Like, you're going to be able to get him at a probably a pretty good price. And if it pans out, you can end up having a difference-making pitcher in the rotation. And I think it's a gamble that a lot of these teams should explore and eventually take a strong push at. And then Noah Syndergaard was not somebody I necessarily had strongly on my radar entering the offseason. And then there was immediate buzz that there was some GMs that really liked Syndergaard and that believed that he could end up bouncing back after the last couple of years that he's had. And everything that I've heard was that he was pretty impressive in that workout, and he was throwing around the mid-90s consistently. One team that I had heard that was interested was the Pittsburgh Pirates. Another team that I know John Heyman of the New York Post reported was the New York Yankees that were in attendance. There was probably about 13-ish other teams that were in there, and it would not surprise me if Syndergaard ended up getting a contract this year to pitch. And I know, as I said before, there's some GMs that were really intrigued by him, and it seems like that intrigue is continuing to grow after that throwing session.
This is just a comment. I don't understand why big league pitchers who have played in the big leagues and ended the season healthy need to throw for scouts. Like, this isn't perfect game tryout camp. Like, I don't understand it. But anyway, that's a completely other topic. You were in the Brewers clubhouse in 2018.
I was.
What do you think about the whole Corbin Burnes going to the Orioles? Who made out the best in this situation, and who made the smartest move?
Boy, I'll tell you, I knew, like, as soon as the first thing that I learned when I was around the Brewers in 2018, 2017 in that range was just how high the Brewers were on Corbin Burnes and what they thought his potential was. And then he was great his first year. He bottomed out his second year, and there was questions about what his long-term outlook would look like. And then next year he ended up breaking out, and ever since he's been one of the best pitchers in the National League. And there's been buzz for the last year or so that he's probably going to end up getting traded. And it all stemmed right after that arbitration hearing, where he even admitted after the fact that the relationship between Burnes and the Brewers was fractured, and it probably was not going to end up being repaired. And I did not necessarily expect a trade to be happening now. I thought that was going to end up being a trade deadline thing, and it seems like Burnes was even thinking that as well. This was so off my radar. This is how I found out about the trade. I was driving. I was going on a date with my girlfriend, and all of a sudden I get a call from someone who's like, if he calls, usually there's something that's going on. And I answer, and he's like, "Do you hear about the big trade?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Burnes just got traded to the Orioles." And I'm like, no shot, no effing shot. Like, I thought it was not real. And obviously it turned out to be real. Made some phone calls, and it seemed like the Orioles really pushed and had been pushing pretty aggressively recently, trying to get Burnes or another high-end starting pitcher. And it seems like Burnes was the one that they really thought was going to be a good fit. And obviously, hard not to think that, because he's one of the best, if not the best, right-handed pitchers in baseball. And putting him atop that rotation that includes a lot of talented youngsters, I think that's a really good thing for Baltimore. And for the Brewers overall, I got a lot of thoughts on this one. You sign Rhys Hoskins, and then you trade Corbin Burnes. That sends a lot of mixed signals here, and it does. I don't know how they're justifying that. It seems like a really weird move overall. And obviously there's been a lot of different rumors surrounding Devin Williams or Willy Adames. I know there's been reports about Adames potentially being available. I still have not gotten that sense quite yet. I don't think he's necessarily available. And at least as of now, they plan on holding on to him. So we'll see what happens there. But I thought the trade was really good for the Orioles. We'll see about their chances of extending Burnes going forward, because that's always a tough one with Scott Boras as his agent. So more likely than not, it's actually probably a virtual certainty that he's going to end up hitting the free agent market at the end of the year. For the Brewers, they got a couple good prospects that they think they can build around, and they got a lot of team-friendly control with those two. I still think they was not a move I would have made. I would have probably ended up waiting until the deadline to see exactly if you can make one more run at it. I get the fact that they wanted to maximize a return for Burnes, but if you're going to do that and then sign Hoskins, I don't know what the plan is. I'm curious what you guys think on that too.
Is that what your girlfriend said? I don't know what the plan is here. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, that's exactly what she said. Yeah, she says that to me more often than not. It seems like a daily thing.
Okay, good. She got to know what she signed up for, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thank goodness she puts up with me. We love that.
Okay, that's good. Eric Kratz's favorite player, unsigned player right now, is Gary Sanchez. You're talking about Gary Sanchez getting interest from the Pirates and some other teams. What are you hearing on that? And I know when I did a Pirates game last year, they weren't super duper high on Henry Davis as their long-term solution at catcher. He was actually playing the outfield, and he was barely catching at all because of his bat, and his catching skills were so lax. So are they going to go into the year? They're clearly not going into the year with Davis as their starter. Is Sanchez a viable option for them?
I think he is a very real option for the Pirates. It all here is going to basically depend on price, because I think when it's all said and done, it's going to be around the $5 million, maybe $6 million mark for Sanchez. And it's just depending on whether or not the Pirates want to pay that price for him. And I totally get their interest in Sanchez, because Henry Davis, he does not have much experience behind the plate at the major league level. And signing a guy like Sanchez or another veteran would make sense and take some of the load off of his plate and take some of the pressure off of him. And I think that'd be a really good thing for him this year and just going forward. I think that'd be beneficial for him. And it seems like, at least with this Sanchez pursuit, that the Pirates think the same thing internally. But if they don't get a Gary Sanchez, I'm really curious to see exactly how the Pirates pivot. Do they explore the trade market for somebody else? Do they end up trying to see who else is out there in free agency? That I'm not sure, but I think Sanchez is a pretty high priority for the Pirates. And all I know is that there's other teams that are involved, and he has apparently has one pretty strong offer on the table. We'll see if he takes that or if the Pirates step up and beat it. But I think Sanchez is firmly in play with the Pirates for sure.
That was going to be my question, was, do you know the other teams that are involved? Because we hit this a little bit earlier. We tried to go through the whole league and who needs catching. I think Gary Sanchez is a big league catcher, and if some guys who have signed are getting 2-year deals at $12 million, to me, I think Gary's a 2-year, $18 million type of guy because of the numbers he's put up. Whether or not you think his defense is good, which it has clearly been well chronicled that in New York it was terrible according to some people, and now it was elite according to the numbers. So it's everywhere. Do you have any idea other teams or how much he could be getting?
Yeah, so as far as the other teams that are involved, I think this is speculation on my end, because I do not know who has made this supposed offer to Sanchez, but I think the Padres make a lot of sense, because I think if you look at their catching situation, I think they can end up using another catcher. And then if you look at Blake Snell's numbers with Sanchez behind the plate, I think that's got to intrigue any team that would potentially sign Blake Snell, because he was really good with Sanchez behind the plate, and possibly pairing those two together next year and potentially for another season or two has to be an intriguing thought. So maybe those guys have the idea of possibly trying to play together again next year. That's just my speculation on my end. I have not heard that, but it seems like the market for Sanchez is the Pirates, and then a few other teams that I am not able to identify quite yet. But trying my best, and hopefully the next time I'm on this show, I'm able to provide more insight on that one.
Need that.
We love it.
Let me ask you this. So Yankees bullpen search. I thought the Yankees had a really good bullpen last year, and I think they're one of the tops in the division, or not in division, in Major League Baseball. So for me, they're looking for another bullpen. Why not another starter as well?
Yeah, I absolutely do think they should end up getting another starting pitcher. I also think, as far as the bullpen search, they were on a lot of these guys. They were on Keenan Middleton. They were on Phil Maton. They were on Ryan Brazier. They were in on a lot of these guys. And the consistent thing that I had heard was that their offers were coming in short compared to what some of these other teams were offering, and they weren't really budging. And I thought Middleton made a whole lot of sense for the Yankees, and I thought that deal was probably going to get done, but the Cardinals ultimately ended up stepping up, offered a more lucrative one-year deal than the Yankees did, and Cardinals also included a club option on that as well. So I think the total value on that, if the option is picked up, is going to be 2 years for $11 million. And the Yankees just weren't willing to go to that level. And it was clear that they wanted to add somebody, and they ended up doing that today as far as the trade for Caleb Ferguson with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And that's going to end up being their Wandy Peralta replacement. And I still think the Yankees need to do something more, because if you look at their offseason, they ended up getting Juan Soto, they got Alex Verdugo, they got Trent Grisham, they've added some other pieces as well, but I still think there's more room for them to be aggressive. And if you end up getting a Juan Soto, obviously that's a really meaningful piece for them, but getting more, I think, is something that should be of high priority for that front office. We'll see if they do it, but the fact that they were being outbid for a lot of these relievers has some questions for me. And I also forgot Marcus Stroman as well. I don't know how I forgot about that one. That one was a really unique situation, because I did not think that deal was going to happen, but for the price, I think the Yankees did a really good deal there. It was a really team-friendly deal, but there's still room for them to press the gas pedal down a little bit further, I think.
Robert, let's finish with this, because you mentioned the Yankees and them acquiring Caleb Ferguson. That happens because the Dodgers need a roster spot open again so they can bring back Ryan Brazier. So that looks like a 2-year deal at $9 million. Incentives can take it up to $13 million. He was pretty good last year, an 0.70 ERA. So were you surprised that it had been a week since the Dodgers did anything?
Yeah, they are, man, I'll tell you, it seems like basically my Twitter mentions this entire offseason have been, why is my GM sleeping? And the only GM you could really not say that for was Andrew Friedman. But like the last week or so, I've been starting to get some DMs or some tweets saying, why is Andrew Friedman sleeping? And it's like, he has had a $1 billion offseason, and apparently he's still trying to do his thing. He ended up trading Ferguson to the Yankees, and then now obviously they ended up getting Ryan Brazier back, and that deal kind of felt like a long time coming, because for most of the offseason, I had heard that Brazier wanted to go back to the Dodgers. And really, with the roster that they've constructed, can you blame him? Obviously, had a lot of success with them last year. Really talented roster, probably the most talented roster in Major League history. That deal felt like a long time coming. I still don't think the Dodgers are quite done yet, because if you look, Clayton Kershaw is still available. And obviously, Kershaw is either going to do one of three things. He's going to go to the Dodgers, he'll go to the Rangers, or he'll retire. And it seems like retirement isn't really something that he's wanting to do at this point. So you would seem to think it'll be the Dodgers or the Rangers. But my guess is he ends up going back to the Dodgers. He'll obviously miss a good part of the regular season, as he's coming back from the injury that he suffered in the postseason. But I believe it's February 14th. That teams can put players in the 60-day IL. So maybe around that point is when the Dodgers are able to bring back Kershaw. That's just my speculation, but I think that at least would make a lot of sense.
There you go, Robert. Hey, great stuff, man. Great to catch up with you. Appreciate the time. That was like one of the most timely guest appearances ever, with your breaking of the Bobby Witt Jr. extension talks, and then all of that kind of coming to fruition. You can follow Robert at @ByRobertMurray and check out all of his work in Fansided, his weekly show as well. Robert, great to talk to you as always, man. Appreciate it. Keep up the great work.
Hey, back at you guys. Always a pleasure. Thank you guys for having me on. And Eric, go Birds, baby. And I'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, enjoy the Super Bowl, Robert. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
Thank you.
Boo the
Cheers,
Birds.
Robert.
Oh, my God.
Let's talk to you soon, bud.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.